If 2021 taught me anything about you guys, it's that you have no idea how to value properties. I'm Adam JD Martin. Welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate channel. Today, we're going to talk all about how to value properties for Canadian markets. 2021, you guys went insane. You just started throwing money at the problem. The only issue with that is that what comes up has to come down. And here we are. It's come down. It's come down about 20%. And if you were one of the ones that purchased in 2021, I feel bad for you right now. If you didn't lock in your mortgages so that you have great rates that are favorable coming into 2024, I feel bad for you too. But what we're gonna do today in this video is break down some strategies for you to avoid making the same mistakes in 2024. And if you were one of the lucky ones that didn't make those mistakes over the last couple of years, then let this video serve to inform you on some of the ways that people have massively screwed this up, including myself. I was buying in 2021, just in case you were pissed off at my intro there. By the way, leave some comments below if you made the same mistakes I did, because I'm gonna cover a couple. One of the first things I wanted to start off with when it comes to valuing properties is the market analysis. It's very important to understand the difference between an entire market, a neighborhood, and even a street. And when it comes to investing in real estate, you actually need to understand all three of those levels and not make the mistake of assuming that all three are the same. When we're looking at the market analysis, we're gonna look at median sales price, we're gonna look at days on market, so how expensive are properties in general, or how inexpensive are they? What should it cost? If I go to purchase a property, how long has it been sitting? Are things selling really fast in this market? That's a seller market. Are things sitting a long time? There's a lot of days on market. That's a buyer's market. And what that's gonna help to do is inform you about what prices you should be offering. We should preface this by saying you should always work with an expert. You should have your power team assembled around you, but what really helps is for you to understand what your power team is doing in the background so that you can help make informed decisions for yourself. The reality is nobody's coming to save you. Watching videos like this is gonna help you stay informed so that you can make great decisions and even choose better expert service providers. So when it comes to market analysis, we're looking at median sales price, we're looking at days on market, and we're trying to get an understanding of the differences inside of our own neighborhood. And part of that is just understanding what's the difference between the north side of the street, the south side of the street, the east, the west, the different neighborhoods and actual settings inside your city. If I look at a city like London, Ontario, everybody who knows that market will understand very well that Adelaide Street, whether you're north or south, is gonna make a very big difference in the valuation of your property. East of Adelaide, big difference from west of Adelaide. If you're in Old East Village, that's a big difference from Woodfield. Understanding those differences is very crucial to understanding what you should be offering in that neighborhood and in that market. You need to have an understanding at all three levels. What should this property be valued at? It's incredibly important. And that really comes into play if you're investing from out of town. So what I would suggest is when you're doing market analysis, start in your own backyard. If you're just practicing, you haven't purchased anything yet, look in your neighborhood, look in your city. Understand the stats and how they perform inside your city so you have a great understanding of the relationship between those different stats as you start branching out, looking at other neighborhoods, other cities, other markets. Very important to understand those relationships so that you can understand something listed for $500,000. If it's been sitting for a while on market and the sales to new listing ratio is down, you can understand what's the relationship between what's actually listed and what's actually gonna get the deal done. It's very important when we're trying to understand price. The next thing that you wanna look at when it comes to valuing properties is the actual physical characteristics. When we're talking about a property, there's a lot of influences. There's the environment around it, okay? Is it right beside a gas station? That's a big influence on the price. Or is it in a quiet, quaint neighborhood with great neighbors? Maybe a cul-de-sac or something like that. When we talk about the actual physical characteristics, we need to start understanding who's the end user of this property. If we're looking at it from an investment perspective, say we're looking at a single family house, is it more marketable or less marketable to have a house with a garage? Well, maybe that's not important in a city like Toronto, where maybe a lot of people use public transit. But if in your city, it's not common for people to use public transit, it's more common for people to have their own transportation, what effect do you think having a garage is going to add to the property? It's obviously going to raise the value. Now, in the same stroke, we need to think about what the properties do not have. If a property doesn't have something like a garage or parking on the premises, or maybe it lacks features like forced air. Maybe it's running on electric heat. As we've all seen in the last few years, the cost of electricity has gone through the roof. So things like electric heat or baseboard heating, that's going to be a negative impact on the price of that property. And so your offers need to be priced accordingly. It's not impossible to add forced air to a building. but there is a lot of added cost. It's important to understand these physical attributes about the properties that you're looking at and comparing them to other properties that have similar attributes or either better or worse, depending on what you're looking for. Now, if we're investing in multifamily properties, I would suggest that we want to be looking at physical characteristics like the nature of the build. Okay, is this a purpose-built building, or is this a building that's been sort of scabbed together and there's many additions? And understanding the difference between the operations of both of those different buildings. The building that's been kind of put together through a bunch of different additions is going to have a lot more operating expenses. There's going to be issues with maintenance. There's going to be additional operating costs based on how the building is heated. There's going to be inefficiencies all throughout the building compared to something like a purpose-built building. Roofing issues are very common with buildings that have been scabbed together. Okay, there's often multiple different levels and pitches, and that adds cost. It also adds to the likelihood that you will have a leak. Things like that really matter when we're thinking about the actual value of a property. You need to, as an investor, understand what's your goal with this investment. Do you want to be super active? Do you want to be super passive? Are you trying to add a lot of strategic value to the building, or are you trying to buy something more turnkey? And that's all going to affect and pull the levers of how you actually make your offer. Another way to value the building is through the income approach. By using the income approach, we can understand what the likelihood is of this asset to actually produce cash for us. Now, I know some of you are going to be more along the lines of a flipper, or you're looking for that appreciation. You're looking to force the value into the building. I would caution you as we go into 2024 now to really start thinking about multiple exit strategies. And one way that you want to look at the building in terms of valuation is what sort of income can it produce? If we have to take our flip and turn it into a rental, what is the going market rate for rent? If it's already rented, what is in our control to actually increase that rent? What can we do to make more money from this building? We want to start looking with the income approach at valuing the building based on how much money it can bring us in every month. That becomes increasingly important as we go into 2024 with high rates, high inflation, high regulation. We're looking at a housing market that is very unstable, and it's very likely that costs will stay high throughout all of 2024. So as your cost basis is high, we want to start looking at valuing buildings appropriately, not emotionally, and we want to become prudent investors. And that means making sure that our buildings aren't going to lose us money every month. On this channel, we've talked for years now about the 1% rule. The 1% rule is not extinct, but it's certainly become a protected species. That thing is going away. It's going the way of the dodo. And part of the reason for that is rates have caused a lot of disruption. Inflation has caused a lot of disruption. Printing the most money, printing all of the money supply in the past few years has caused a lot of disruption. So the 1% rule has sort of gone away. We've seen massive appreciation throughout most of our markets, a lot of which is corrected in 2023. It remains to be seen how fast we can correct the cost of the building compared to the actual rent that we can generate. Rent is much slower to increase. And as you know, we're regulated here in Ontario to only increase by about 2% every year. Sometimes it's 2.5, sometimes it's less than 2. But the average is about 2%. But our costs have gone up a lot more than that. We need to be very careful when we start thinking about income and start thinking about how to actually use that income to value the building. We need to be diligent here. That's something that we forgot about in 2021 and throughout the last few years. So when we use the income approach, we're probably not going to find the 1% rule, but we're going to look to see our cost and see what type of income we can do. And we're going to look to also exercise strategies to raise our income potential. We're looking at things now in 2024. We're going to hope to add more rent through adding more units, right? We want to increase the density of our buildings. So when you're looking at these buildings and valuing them, you want to consider things like additional dwelling units. You want to consider things like adding rent through adding utility, like washers and dryers, dishwashers, adding bedrooms, adding potential garages or sheds that could be rented out, renting additional parking in your space that might be applicable in your city. There's a lot of ways we can raise rent outside of that mandated, average 2% raise, but we have to get creative when we're doing that. So when we're valuing these buildings, we need to look at not only what's there now, but what's the potential of this building? How could we get it so that it can make more money? And that's a really important thing to consider when you're looking at these potential investments, because you might see something that the average homeowner looks over, or that the average investor who's not watching and commenting on the Canadian Real Estate channel, they're not thinking about these things. So we want to add value wherever possible. We want to get to the maximum maximum highest and best use for this property. And that's how we're gonna value the property. Another way to look at things, and you're gonna hear this all over the internet, maybe you know an appraiser who will reference this a lot. I'm gonna discourage you from using this strategy, but it is a strategy, is called the cost approach. What's the cost of replacing this building? A lot of times this might be used by an appraiser or for insurance purposes, but I actually don't think it's valid for us in 2024 when we're looking at investing in a property. So I want to discourage you from looking at what's the replacement cost, because that'll be a fortune. And right now, with the level of instability in the market, I really want you to focus more on things like the income approach and surefire ways where we can get money extracted out of the asset. After all, if the building's not producing money for you, I have a hard time calling it an asset. I want everybody to focus for 2024, and when we're looking at evaluating buildings, what's the money that this thing's gonna bring home? What's it gonna cost to get there? And looking at things like the environmental factors of what's going on in the market, what's going on in the neighborhood, what's going on in that street, using recent, relevant, comparable sales. That's very important. It's going to become even more important as we experience more instability. You have to look at apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Gone are the times where you can just assume that if we come to an agreement now, by the time that we close, it's going to be 5 to 10 to 20% more in value. That's gone. 2020 is a blip on the radar. It's completely gone. We've entered a new market. That market is going to favor those that pay close attention to the numbers. And the numbers mean income minus expenses. What's left at the end of the day? That's how we want to value properties. And that here at the Canadian Real Estate Channel is what we're focused on. We want to see you guys make money. Part of that is making calculated risk, but understanding actual risk. What is the effective risk if the costs outpace our ability to increase revenue? At the same time, I'm not doom and gloom on all of this situation here. The next coming year, the coming years, maybe 1 to 3 years, we are going to see a lot of people make a lot of money. You have a choice to make here. It's either problems or profits. You have to decide, are you going to be one of the ones that makes money, or are you going to be one of the ones that goes in and emotionally purchases something based off your feelings? We're done with feelings. 2021 was about feelings, and I know how we all felt. It felt great. Unfortunately, that roller coaster has come to a bottom, and the people who win coming through this next year and the coming years are going to be those that have cash, they have the ability to take action, and they know how to analyze deals so that when they take action, they have the ability to repeat the process and continue for the next few years to build their portfolios. So I hope you'll join me on that process as we continue to build our portfolios and grow together. If you got some value out of this video or you want to add to the discussion, please leave some comments below. We want to help our other Canadians continue to invest in real estate. Part of that's sharing your wisdom. Did you make a bad deal in 2021 like I did? Did you make mistakes on financing? Did you purchase a property based on emotion versus the actual numbers? What happened with that? What was the outcome? What can we learn as a channel, as Canadians, so that we can invest better for 2024?